Welcome, Virgo, to your Pluto retrograde 5 month deep dive forecast for the ascendant, the sun, or the moon. From May the 6th through to October the 16th, Pluto, the planet of power and transformation, inverts in its annual 5 month retrograde by 2 degrees 27 minutes in the air sign of Aquarius. Pluto, very much about the collective, and the sign of Aquarius, very much about how we connect. But what will it mean for you personally, Virgo? On screen is your event chart, the exact moment that Pluto stations retrograde, and all the planetary influences. I'm going to share with them, so by the end of the video, you'll have a clear understanding of what's upcoming in terms of your energy, work, relationships, and finances. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundell. A very warm welcome. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, please do so now to help it to continue to thrive. But please also click or tap the bell notification symbol. If we go back to the spring of 2023, Pluto made its first entrance into the sign of Aquarius for around 10 weeks. He returned on his birthday, the 21st of January 24, through to the 1st of September. From the latter part of November 24, it's been in the sign of Aquarius. The significance is rather ironic for you personally because the sign of Aquarius represents your sixth solar house. Because Pluto's about change and the sixth house has an echo of your sign, it may be around the things that have been very dear to you in terms of routines, lifestyle choices, your job, your approach to exercise, diets, perhaps even your work, that Pluto's been prompting you to think about how you can evolve. It may also be the case that things have been evolving around you and change has been foisted upon you. Over the next 5 months of the retrograde, you have a chance to think very, very deeply about what the next step should be, and perhaps to evoke the potential for new beginnings. On the screen now is your event chart, and there's Pluto in that sixth house at 5 degrees 30. By the 23rd of June, Pluto's going to invert within 5 degrees. So it starts off in what's known as the third dward of the sign of Aquarius, which is sub-ruled by Aries. So there's a fiery passion at the very start of this process, but from the 23rd of June, it becomes more emotional as the dward is then the sign ruled by the sign of Pisces. But what we do have is your ruler Mercury in a very tense, potentially brittle right angle with Pluto. In the natal chart, any kind of Mercury-Pluto aspect gives people a tremendous power of analysis, which is something you often have a gift for too. And that could be something that shows up for you these next 5 months. But the key is that Mercury, along with the Sun and the part of fortune, are in the part of your chart to do with fresh experiences, being more adventurous, opening things up, being more daring, invoking a more freedom and independent, loving part of your nature. Whereas Pluto's in the part of your situation very much to do with being of service, maintaining obligations and responsibilities. So that creates a conflict. So if your thinking is about doing something different, but someone you're close to would prefer you to stick with what you know, that's where there could be some very tense conversations. But you know, it could also be an internal battle. Do you stick with what you know, or are you more daring? That could be a theme. As far as that closer personal relationship, the moon is in the fifth house, which is lovely. It can be very affectionate. It's just in the cautious Capricorn, technically in its detriment. But for you, it's in a square with Saturn in the eighth house of devotion, or what we share, particularly around resources. So if you're wanting to do something that's freer and more creative, the moon's link to Mercury is very strong, especially if you want to be more demonstrative or learn something new. Ninth house very much about higher education. But if the person you're closely connected to, Saturn square the moon, is very wary of the financial implications of a change, that can create some resistance too. What we do have, of course, is Uranus, the planet of change, ironically, right at the top of your chart. And So whether you decide to stick with how you'd like it to be or not, circumstances around us all at the moment are changing at pace. Now, as Pluto enters deeper into the retrograde, Jupiter moves forwards. So the trine between them, which is there now, it's just a little broad, becomes much tighter as this year goes on. So that desire to be more off the cuff, which may be a little bit out of character for you, can become stronger. So if you're doing something at the moment that you're just not enjoying, a much more carefree part of your nature is going to challenge the part of you that likes to stick with routine, likes a degree of metronomic patterns that just makes you generally feel safe. The other thing to tell you is the Sun is in a stunning link with Jupiter. So if you can collaborate with other people who share your values, the 11th house very Aquarius, but Jupiter almost about faith, particularly in the water sign of Cancer where it's exalted. If you're collaborating with people that can do things in new and fresh ways, some radical ideas, especially if you're very much into technology, you could be a trendsetter. But that does mean that something about the patterns that have been so consistent in your world are by by necessity going to have to flex and alter. So we've got some upcoming influences that are a bit tasty to tell you. At the end of May, Mars will have moved into Taurus and is in a right angle for the last 10 days with Pluto. This whole issue with Mercury square with Pluto is going to be amplified hugely by then. If you're really feeling fed up with what you do, you don't feel very appreciated or recognized for the dedication and service you provide, that desire to do something bold and different could be very strong. But this event chart of the moon in that square with Saturn is still going to potentially play out. Then, towards the end of July, with the Sun in Leo, we have an opposition. For you, that's the 6th, 12th. That may be when you're going through the period of deep reflection. What do I do? Uranus has moved forwards by then in the trine with Pluto, which is retreated. And that reflection may also create some tension with someone you're close to. Once Pluto goes direct on the 16th of October, latterly in that month, we do have a Sun Pluto square. But in terms of these next 5 months, I think the position of Uranus is very, very telling. You can also see the part of fortune is in a conjunction with Uranus right at the top of your chart. So doing something fresh and different could actually be the best thing you ever do. But obviously, the sixth house may have represented safety and what you are very familiar with, particularly if you have been a service provider. Now you're being encouraged in some ways to do something very bold. Talking of bold, Mars, the planet of passion, at home in the sign of Aries, has just entered the third decan of that sign, sub-ruled by Jupiter, and is in a square with Jupiter, 8-11. That may see you much more in the mood to throw the dice of life. But that, in some ways, downplays what you may have done for a long time that's felt very comfortable for you. And you can see the North Node, as far as your relationship's concerned, forges a lovely link with the position of Mercury. So, as always, these things are complex, but most of all, they depend on our unique circumstances. To navigate what's ahead, I've produced a Pluto retrograde Thrive and Survive workbook, which you can download beneath this video. I'm also going to summarize the 4 areas of energy, work, relationships, and finances next. But just to say, my personal horoscopes, you can now get 3 for the price of one. I've slashed the price. The one you pay for is your life roadmap report, which helps you to understand the patterns that are played out in your life, but also get a more intimate understanding of them so you can work with them better future forwards. The 2 free charts, the 12 months transits, and also your draconic soul karmic analysis. I've done this because I've been interested in astrology since I was 14, full time 30 years. but a lot of people are feeling the pinch with what's going on around the world, particularly around energy prices. I want to do my bit. Natal astrology really can help us to navigate this world so much more effectively if we know our charts. Please see below for more. That's three for the price of one. If you've yet to watch your May monthly forecast, Virgo, that's on the screen. Yet to watch your Uranus into Gemini 1 year forecast, that's on the screen. Like to work with me one-to-one, please see my testimonials below. Yet to take advantage of my free daily horoscope fired to your device each morning, please see below for that. You can get your early day celestial pit stop. So, uh, just before I tell you about that workbook, I'm going to summarize. As far as your professional situation is concerned, if you're able to embrace the more futuristic energy of Aquarius, which may be around technology, but it could be around teamwork, and let go of something you have done in the past, the deep thinking that you go through over these next 5 months can set the scene for something really quite splendid for you, particularly with Uranus and Pluto coming into a fabulous trine as the year goes on. If you're in a situation, particularly with a partner or your own finances mean it's not so easy to switch out of what you're doing now, I think a sense of resentment could build up if you don't at least give you the chance to investigate and gain greater understanding of what the options are. If you are able to be more dynamic and go for it, I feel the sun's link to Jupiter is fantastic. Also, the planet of money, Venus, is right at the top of your chart. If you can use your mind and also your diplomacy, you're on a winning wicket. But as far as relationships per se are concerned, that North Node position is intriguing because it's kind of intimating. Stay in touch with how you really instinctively feel things. It will be protective. But I think if a relationship isn't so good around intimacy or just being warmer and freer, that may be an area that you want to shake up. And perhaps that would be the pattern that you would release yourself from, or at least the safety of what you know very well. But if you find yourself reviewing what you're eating, what you're drinking, some long-standing conditions that may have got you down a little bit, finding out more about them. That's where Pluto is very active in a constructive way. So to download that workbook, which is all about the mythology, astronomy, astrology, tells you what gives you an overview of Pluto in each of the 12 signs, but also each of the houses. Of course, no one has had Pluto in our lifetime in Aquarius. Please see below to download that. It's been a real pleasure being with you, Virgo. Thank you so much for joining me and look forward to seeing you again soon.